Lifelines have the really important job of keeping you on your boat. So that means that they themselves need to be in really good shape and up to the task. Now, the standard lifeline material is steel. It's steel cable, just like standing rigging. The problem with it is that if it gets damaged, it's not repairable. The alternative is Dyneema. Now, a lot of people are actually afraid of Dyneema Lifelines, saying that they're unsafe, even though they're like just so much stronger than steel. It's just ridiculous to even think that that's an argument. But their second argument, which has some validity, is chafe. Dyneema Lifelines can chafe, but so can steel lifelines. Like, all of them can get damaged from chafe. The big difference is Dyneema Lifelines can be repaired. Now, in our situation, the Dyneema Lifeline right here at the stanchion has gotten chafed, and it's not chafed from being a lifeline. It's chafed because of the way I had our wind steering routed, and it was actually torquing on the line right there. So in order to fix it, we've done two things. First, we've already changed the way the line's routed so that way it doesn't pull hard on the lifeline. And the second thing we're going to do is repair the lifeline itself. The first thing we need to do to get the lifeline repaired is release the tensions. We have to untie it from back here, and that takes all the tension off of it, and then we can work on it and splice in a new piece of Dyneema to do a mending splice. Okay, so what we need to do here first is actually cut it, because as you can see, it's pretty badly chafed, but it's not that horrible. I mean, if we look at it, we still have about 6 fibers, so it's about half the original strength. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut here, that way we can start doing our splicing. Now, what we need to do is actually splice in a replacement piece. So here I have some 6mm Dyneema, which is actually the same kind that's on here. It looks a little thicker simply because it hasn't been stretched out. Because this one is 5 years old, this one's brand new. So you can see the color changes as well over the years. So what we're going to do is we're going to splice it in, doing an end-to-end splice over here, and then another end-to-end splice over here. The minimum that we need to bury for Dyneema, when you're doing any splice, is 72 times the diameter of the line in millimeters. So this is 6mm line, so 6 times 72 comes out to be a huge number, which if you convert it from millimeters to inches is roughly 17 inches. So that means we need to bury 17 inches of the new Dyneema into the old one, and then 17 inches of tail of the old one into the new one, and then vice versa on the other side. So let's get splicing. So the first thing you need to do is measure. So you need to measure out 17 inches, which puts us right here. So that means that all of this needs to get buried into the new piece, and we need to bury 17 inches of new into this old piece here. So the first thing you're going to do is grab your new piece and set them length on length. So that way they're both 17 inches. And we just push the weave open here and pass the fid through. And we're going to simply pull through until we get to that 17-inch mark, which is right here. So now the two tails are even, so we know we're both at the 17-inch mark. The next part is going to be to pass this huge long length through this guy. So now we have the replacement piece, the old tail that's going to be buried into the replacement piece, the old piece, and the new tail that's going to be buried into the old piece. And most importantly, if we pull on the standing ends, it's locked. It can't go anywhere, so it's a locked splice. So this is how you do a locked end-to-end splice, which you can then use in situations like this to repair your synthetic lifeline. Just gotta put a little mark here, further up. That way I know when I'm getting near the end. So now we're just going to open the weave. To test if we need to go completely further. If we need to go any further, I'm just gonna pull back on this and milk it back in. It should almost disappear. So since we see how it sticks out about another inch, that means we need to bury it about another inch or so. Now we're going to taper this. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this apart and we're going to taper it down really gradually. Now that this is tapered nicely, we're just going to milk it back into the cover. Or into the old line. Now we have a very neatly and nicely tapered splice, so it goes from the end-to-end splice back to just the old line, and that's completely finished. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to do it again at the other end of all this. So this next one I'm going to show you guys in time lapse to speed this up because no one wants to watch that over and over again. Okay, the next step in the process is going to be to do the same thing but on the other side. The next step is now going to be to splice these two together. Now there's a little caveat here though. The splice won't fit through the stanchion hole. So that means we need to set the splice far enough so that the splice ends completely over in this area. So we're actually going to be cutting it even further back when we do the actual splice. The next step is going to be to tie the lifeline back onto the stanchion at an acceptable length. So we want about 1.5 feet. So 18 inches of adjustment available to us if we need it. Now we got that guy tied off. Just got to measure over here. So from this point we need at least 17 inches. That way we have space for the splice. So we're going to go from back here. Let's see. So this puts us at 17 at about this area. So we'll come over another inch. So that gives us plenty of space there. So here we're at 17 inches. Just gonna open this up. So when we do the splice, we're gonna end up in this area here. Now we also have to take into effect that there's gonna be some shrinkage when we do the splice because everything's gonna get shorter because it opens up and the weave opens. So that means that we're gonna need to give this, a little bit of slack. And we wanna measure 17 inches from here, which puts us to about here. So I'm going to cut this tail off because we don't need this part. Now if you're ever unsure which one goes through first, it's really simple. All you got to do is just try it. If it's wrong, it's going to pull apart, and then you just have to do it the other way around. Now with the locking splice, it's really important when you do it that the lock works when you pull on the standing parts and not when you pull on the tails, because the part that actually takes the load is the standing part. So as you can see, this looks good, but it doesn't work. It just pulls apart. So you need to make sure when you do it that it not only looks right, but it is correct. So you need the splices to go through in such a way that the standing part is the one that locks it all together. And to make that be the case, all you have to do is you pass one of them through, and then the next part that's going to be passed through is actually going to be the entire long tail that comes through this guy. So basically, if you didn't have to pass this really long tail that goes all the way to the end of the lifeline, then you didn't do it right. And then when you test it, it's just gonna pull apart like you saw. Okay, so now, when I pull on the standing parts, it locks, so everything holds together. So you're gonna take the part that's fixed, that you don't have access to, and that one has to pass through the one that you do have access to at the end. Then you take the end of the end that you have access to, and you pass it back through. So pretty much try it. If it pulls apart, so when you pull on the standing parts, it opens in a way that would look like this, then that means you have to do it the other way. So however you did it, just do it opposite and you'll get it. But you just need to have it so that when you pull on the standing parts, it locks. So we're just gonna splice these two up and then we'll be all set. So it's the same as the other splice, so I'm just gonna speed this up, so time lapse for you all. And then I'll show you guys at the very end how you tighten it all back up and put it back to normal. So that way it's good as new and like it never happened. Okay, now that the splice is all finished, the broken part has been completely removed and a patch piece has been put in. So it's all spliced back together. It's all super strong. So the last step is to just reattach the lifeline at the back. So I just use a simple lashing. Back to where the old steel turnbuckles used to attach, I just attach this guy. So now that we have it nice and tight, we're just going to tie it off. Now tying it off is really, really easy. You just do a little half hitch there, and then the next one goes in front, but then when it passes through this section, it goes back behind, and then you pull it forward. And that will hold in Dyneema really well. It won't slip, it's not going to slide. Everything is just rock solid. But you do need to get 3 of them. So you want to see 3 of them with that end pulled over. If you don't have enough tail, just do it a little closer back. Now the only caveat to this, you don't want to go too far back, because when it comes to untying it, having this gap is really advantageous. So leave yourself a little gap where you just come in front, and then pull, and then in front again, and you pass it down through this part, and then pull again. And then I just do a little half hitch just to hold everything in place, but that's not structural, that's more just because I like to tidy it up. And you can go really fancy and do a bunch of them and do what looks like a French whipping, but the part that does the holding is right here. It's this little knot that you guys see there. So with that, the lifeline is fully repaired, everything's back on, and it's like it never happened. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends.
And if you'd like to follow our journey in real time on a map, receive postcards from our ports of call, and message us directly to the boat, you can go ahead and become a patron using the link in the description down below.